People who get more done than you don't have more time. In fact, they probably waste as much time or more than you do. It costs $20,000 to sit in the front row of a basketball game for my local pro team. Those people are wasting the same 3 to 4 hours that I'm wasting, and they aren't working the whole time. So how are they making so much more money? It all comes down to how they use their time. If everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, then the richest people in the world have just figured out a way to use their 24 hours in a more effective way than you or I. It's called leverage. And once I discovered it, I started using it in every area of my life, using shortcuts, software, or other people. I want to share the 17 ways I found to save more than 20 hours every week, and I've broken them down into the amount of time for each. The best part is you don't have to be a billionaire to use these systems daily. If you use all 17 of these, you'll get a full day of your life back each week. Let's go. Number 1, use a timer. This gets you into action. Now, if I'm procrastinating on something, I will just write down the thing that I'm going to do and then set a timer for 10 minutes and just do it. Now, I'm going to say this saves me at least 10 minutes a day, but you could argue that it is much longer. So I'll call it 1 hour a week of time saved. I'll put a link below so you can buy this timer. It cost me about 30 bucks on Amazon, and it is my favorite productivity tool. Number 2, carry a notebook and a pen. Now, I use this little notebook here. I have another notebook I also use. I'm playing around with using this to replace my phone. Basically, it allows me to not waste time forgetting things. So if I promise somebody I'm going to do something, I'll write it down in the notebook. If I have a good idea, I'll write it down. If I just want to recap my day at the end of the day, I'll write that down. There's no rules about how to use this, but if you have a notebook, you will more likely remember things instead of forgetting them. And that's going to save me at least an hour a week trying to rack my brain for what I promised and making sure that I'm not letting anyone down. Number 3, turn off notifications on your phone and your computer. So I turn off all of the notifications. And whenever I install a new app, I say notifications off. I don't even have notifications for texts, for emails, for anything. There are no notifications unless somebody calls me. I said that word a lot, notifications. The only way you can get through to me is if you call me, and people don't call each other, so you don't have to worry about getting distracted. You can do the same on your computer. If you turn them all off, it will avoid distractions and you'll save at least an hour per week. Number 4, use a distraction blocking app. My favorite is Freedom. So this is another way of preventing you from going to YouTube or Twitter or checking your email when you are sitting down focused trying to work. So I use both Freedom and Pause. So Pause is a free app that makes you pause before going to things like Facebook or whatever. And even just that little pause, that little like 20-second pause will stop you from going to apps that are going to distract you. Now, this saves me at least an hour a week, but the first time you do it, you're going to find that it saves you a ton of extra time. So those are all the things I do to avoid distractions while I'm working. Number 5 is listening to books rather than reading them. Now, I'll still read books, and if I really like something, I will listen to it and read it, but I find that reading just takes all of my attention and it is a lot slower than listening. And most books can be distilled down to really a couple of key points that you'll get faster if you listen. So I'll use the Audible app. I have a subscription I have for many years, and I will listen to books on 1.5 or 2 times speed. And once you get used to that, it's really easy to do. You can digest a ton of ideas that way. So I'll listen to a book and I'll write down the notes of the key ideas to then share with you. Number 6 is walk while you talk or meet people, right? I aim to get about 12,000 steps a day. That's about 6 miles or so. And if I met people and walked separately, it would take a lot more time. So what I'll do is if I have a meeting at work, I will go for a walk with that person. Or if I have a phone call, I will call while I'm walking. I'll even listen to audiobooks from step number 5 while I'm walking, but it just allows me to get my steps in. It allows me to get moving, and I always sleep better and I'm in better shape if I get those 12,000 steps. So I just combine those 2 things and it saves me about 2 hours per week. Now, the next few are all about how you handle meetings and the rhythm of your daily work. So number 7 is set recurring meetings in your calendar for the most important things. So what that means is if I have a staff meeting with my people, I will make sure that that is recurring in the calendar so we don't have to do a bunch of scheduling. If I know I'm going to get up early and write every day, I'll set that as a recurring meeting. If I'm doing podcast recording, I'll do that at the same time every week. If it's recurring, then I can work the rest of my week around it. Now, you don't want to fill up your calendar with a million million different meetings, but just take the key sort of 5 to 7 most important things and set recurring meetings so that you have that. And that usually saves me about 2 hours per week in lost productivity, because if I don't meet with certain people often enough, then they'll waste time doing things that they shouldn't be doing, or they will feel lost and I have to spend a bunch of time kind of bringing them back into the fold. Number 8, if I do have to schedule meetings, then I use a scheduling software. So Calendly or Acuity, you only have to go through scheduling with people like a couple of times and you realize that it takes 5 to 6 back and forths before you finally decide, hey, we're meeting at 9:30 on Wednesday morning. Whereas if you just send them a link, say, hey, pick a time here that works for you, it will save a bunch of back and forth. And it usually saves me about an hour of that every week. Speaking of back and forth, number 9 is to call if you have more than 5 back and forth messages. So what that means is if you are texting your friend and you're talking about where you're going to go for lunch tomorrow, or what does he think of a certain thing, or maybe you're having an argument with your friend, if there are more than 5 back and forth messages, I just hit dial and I call them. Because if you have to write a novel to explain your side of things, it's much better to have the conversation. There's just certain tones that you don't pick up via text, and frankly, it just reduces confusion if you call them. Now, calling is an underrated art, and maybe this is something that if you're younger, you don't like doing, but if you get into a habit of calling people, so few people actually do that you will stand out amongst all of the other people that are just sending emails or Slacks or whatever. So this saves me at least an hour a week, and on a good week, it could save me like 6 hours of back and forth. Number 10 is what I call the do it now mentality. So for 2-minute or less tasks, I just do it now. So if somebody says, hey, we should invite Joe to this thing, I will pick up the phone and text Joe right away. If someone says, hey, what time are we supposed to be, at the thing, I will go into my calendar and look up the time. If someone says, hey, we need somebody to come fix this thing, I will try to find them on my phone and text them right away. If you decide to schedule a meeting, send the invite right away. You don't want to carry around a bunch of these little to-dos with you all day when you can just pick up your phone and sort a lot of that stuff. Now, I learned this from an entrepreneur that had a $50 million business, because he would call me every day for like 10 straight days. And the deal that we were working on was a pretty small deal. I said, why are you calling me so often? And he said, if it's on my mind, I do it now. And so I just took that, and that is number 10, the do it now mentality. This saves me at least 2 hours per week. Number 11 is just a principle, and it's kind of a funny one. It's called avoid lines at all costs. So I don't like waiting in lines, and so I try to avoid it in any way that I can. And I learned this from my dad because he wanted to buy a Tesla a while back, and back then you had to wait in line to put your reservation down so you could get one of the first ones. And so we made an appointment to go down there and wait in line. We were going to have breakfast and everything. When we got there, the line was around the block, and we drove out for like 45 minutes to get there. And he looked at me and he said, I don't want it that bad. And so then we just went to breakfast and then went home. And he never did end up buying a Tesla because he never wanted to wait for it. And it just kind of taught me, like, your time is worth more often than the thing you were waiting in line to get. There's a bread shop around the corner from where I live where people are always waiting in line to buy a freaking croissant. You can buy croissants anywhere. And in fact, croissants are not like the best thing in the world. You could probably live without a croissant. Is it worth waiting for a half hour to buy a croissant when you could just buy anything else for breakfast? If you can avoid lines, if you can start to learn to avoid lines, and you can't do this all the time, but you'll save at least an hour per week. And you'll be shocked at how many people are just willing to stand in line to wait for anything. So that's number 11, avoid lines at all costs. Number 12, buy everything online. So I avoid walking into stores unless I'm legitimately browsing for something that I want to buy, or if I have to try something on. But most stuff you can buy online. So I try to avoid going to like Target or Walmart or stores like that because I can buy it on Amazon, right? I try to avoid, if I know I want to buy a book, then I'll just buy the book online rather than going to the store to buy the book. Driving to a store, waiting in line at a store, browsing and then paying more money, it's just not worth it, right? So the more stuff you can buy online, the more time you will save. I estimate this saves me about 2 hours per week. All right, number 13, prep your meals every week. Now, if you can afford to, hire a chef to come in and do it. That'll save you tons of time, but I don't do that. I prep my meals every week, and basically I eat the same thing for lunch and dinner almost every day, probably 5 to 6 days a week. And it's because I enjoy it. It's just a very simple meal that I put together. In fact, on my other channel, you can see the recipe for it. I still do this. I've been doing it for years, and it takes me about an hour hour to cook it. But if I'm honest, the shopping and whatever, maybe 1 to 2 hours, right? But it saves me at least 5 hours a week, because if you don't have to decide what you're eating and you just have healthy options available, then it's just easy for you to just grab that thing and pop it in the microwave and go. But if you have to decide, even if you get it delivered, you have to look at what you want on DoorDash, and then you're kind of thinking about it, and then it might take a while. It's just a waste of time. So prep your meals every single week, and that will save you at least 3 hours. Number 14 is similar, is find a breakfast or a snack or a drink or whatever that you like and buy a ton of it. So I eat the same breakfast every day, and I don't prep that ahead of time. It's just yogurt and protein powder and a bunch of other stuff that I put in there, but I just have all of the materials to make that, and it takes me about 5 minutes to make. I have a ton of that stuff, and it makes it really easy for me to know what to eat for breakfast every day. Same with snacks. I eat little bars like this sometimes, and we just keep a bunch of them in the house so that I never run out, so that I always have something to eat. You actually spend a lot more time thinking about prepping and planning food than you think. So I would say finding these things saves me an additional 2 hours per week. Number 15, get 2 months of savings in your bank account. Stressing over money is a time suck. And if you have enough money to just pay your bills whenever they come up, then you're not going to worry about it as much, right? If you have to stack your bills up and then decide when you're going to pay them, when the money comes in, whatever, you're just wasting a ton of time. And so you don't want to be stressing about money. I would say just having 2 months of savings, not even 6 months or 12 months, just 2 months, that's going to save you at least 2 hours per week. If you want to save even more time on money, then number 16 is set your bills to autopay. So once you have enough, set your bills to automatically pay. Your rent, your car payment, whatever you have, just set everything to automatically pay so that you don't have to think about it. All you do is just log in and check the balance on your bank account. And this saves me an additional 1 hour per week. Now, number 17 is the last one. It's my favorite. It's all around how you do the daily chore. So how you keep your house clean, right? And there's 2 ways you can approach this. One is the cheap way, and one is costs you a little bit of money, but saves you more time and makes you happier. So the cheap way is to make a chore list and divide up the house cleaning duties. So you and the other people that you're living with, you say, hey, you're in charge of dishes, you're in charge of garbage, you're in charge of this, and that is their job every week. So it's not just one person pestering all of the other people, it's just that person does that job. The other way, which I think is a little bit better, but it costs a little money, is hire a cleaner. So you can hire a cleaner that will come in for 90 minutes and clean your house better than you could ever do. And they could do this once every 2 weeks. It will cost you maybe $100, $150. When I was in the UK, it was less than £100. And it saved me at least 3 hours a week. Let's call it 1 to 3 hours a week, and we'll compromise and say 2. But also they did a better job. And every time they came, I was happier. And I just remember thinking every single time, I was like, this is totally worth it. In total, we've saved more than 20 hours per week. It's a full day each week that you can use to work on your business, level up your health, or learn something new. And once you've saved all this time, how do you get yourself to do something with it? Go check out this video over here where I break down how to take a big goal and make progress on it even when you don't feel like doing it. And thank you for watching this video. Do me a favor, if you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing, and we'll see you in the next one.